From the Hype HQ studio in Chicago, Illinois, it's Startup Hype Man, the podcast. Hello, everyone. My name is Raj Nation, and I am the founder of Startup Hype Man. Fast-growing startups work with me because they want to become better storytellers. Whether that's for customers, investors, or a packed audience, they know that story is their ticket to stand out, stand apart, and change the game. And this podcast here is where I talk with entrepreneurs and leaders in the startup ecosystem, ranging from scale stage to early stage, as they share specific strategies that they have executed to stand out across three specific areas: sales, marketing, and people. Before we begin today's episode, remember you can head to startuphypeman.com and subscribe to the newsletter that doesn't suck. You'll get new podcast episodes and timely reads written by me, but also helpful articles from around the web and a notice of upcoming pitch competitions. All right, let's dive in and hear how today's guest is changing the game. Ladies and gentlemen, making his way to the microphone from Anderson, Indiana, and currently residing in Indianapolis, Indiana, he is the Chief Marketing Officer at Lacy. Please welcome Kyle Lacy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
The crowd goes crazy.
Or in COVID, it's just, yeah.
Actually, I just learned yesterday on Clubhouse that the Clubhouse version of applause is to rapidly tap the mute and unmute button so it looks like you're applauding. I didn't realize that was a thing. I always thought when I saw that it was people's Wi-Fi going in and out, but apparently it means applause.
Anyways, I know I'm still not on Clubhouse, but that's okay. You can take care of it for me.
As I mentioned, he is Kyle Lacy, CMO of Lacy. What is Lacy? Well, they are a powerfully simple training software that helps teams learn, practice, and do better work. They enable busy teams to get on the same page, stay ahead of change, and deliver amazing experiences to customers and prospects. Now, Lacy has grown in the years it has been around. They are now over 200 employees and still growing with over 1,100 customers. They've reached a Series C round, raising over $15 million. They are doing a lot of things right, and a lot of that has to do with what Kyle and his team have been able to accomplish on the marketing side, because they've achieved 20x revenue growth, with 70% of that sourced by marketing. And on Kyle's team, it's not just that he has what you'd think of as traditional marketers, but he also has the SDRs under his wing. And specifically today, we're going to talk a lot about marketing. And I want everyone listening to really pay attention to what we talk about, because it might be counterintuitive to what you're used to hearing. And that is, our topic today is making your brand your competitive advantage. So Kyle, first off, welcome to the show. Why is this on your mind, and why is this important to you?
Oh man, thank you. First off, I've been looking forward to this. So brand's important to me because I think that, especially in the software world, we're going to be constantly in feature wars for the rest of our lives. And it's so much easier for competitors to build out feature sets that compete with yours, that I truly believe that the only way you have a competitive advantage and you win a market is based off of your brand, which consists of your people, your customers, and the overall community that you develop as a company.
We're going to dive all into this as we have our conversation today. But before we do that, let's learn a little bit more about Kyle himself. Now, Kyle, I'm curious to know, so you have an extensive marketing background. Like, you've published 3 different books on marketing. You've been head of marketing at multiple companies, or a leadership role of some kind. What I'm curious to know is, if we take this, if we take it back, I'm finna take y'all back, man. If we do that and we go into the deep memory banks of Kyle Lacy, what is the first thing in your life that you ever marketed or sold?
Oh, yeah.
It could literally be like you convinced your parents to get a dog.
No, so there are 3 different things that happened. Number one is, I was obsessed with garage sales. Growing up, we lived in a neighborhood, for most of my childhood. And then we moved out to the country, and there's no garage sales in the country. But in the neighborhoods, we would have garage sales, and I would try to sell everything that I owned. I would put it out on the driveway. People would come by. I would sell my stuff. Then I would go buy some thing that my parents probably threw away a couple of weeks ago. But that was the first thing. The second one, was I tried to convince all of my neighbors to stop smoking. So I made signs, and I was four or five, maybe, non-smoking signs, and went and put them up all over their front doors and garage doors, all over the neighborhood. And then the third was I was collecting cans to recycle, and I made signs. I made leaflets that my mom helps me with that I then photocopied and took them around to houses to say, Kyle will be around with his wagon to pick up cans for recycling at like 5 p.m. on Tuesday. And I had drawn a picture of me pulling a red wagon with like a whole, like way too many cans, which is very marketing of me that I could ever pull. But yeah, those are the three that come to mind. I had a pretty active childhood in the marketing world and sales.
Did you did you collect these cans to then go like resell them for 2 cents or whatever?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't remember. All I remember is the marketing of the service. I don't know. I don't really remember doing it or what I did with the cans, but I had to have taken them and got change. I'm assuming. I don't know why else I would do it other than I like the design of the cans. I have no idea.
It's interesting you bring up those examples because I remember being probably like 6 or 7 years old. And I also really enjoyed garage sales. And one day,
man, I still love garage sales.
Right? Like one day it was like summer break. And I remember my mom would always like call it, from work. She'd always like check in at like, I don't know, 1 p.m. or something like that. And I was like, can we have a garage sale when you get home? And she was like, I don't know about that, but why don't you put some things together and we can talk about it? And so like I spent the entire afternoon in the basement just like grabbing things. And I'm pretty sure she thought I would just drop it after like the phone call ended.
Yeah.
But then she got home and I was like, okay, like, so let's do this. Can we have our garage sale this evening? And she was like, well, I don't know if we'd really get any people after 4 p.m. So yeah. Why don't you, tell you what, maybe if you still want to do it this weekend, we can have a garage sale. And I was like, okay. And then naturally I like forgot about it by the weekend.
Yeah, we would have, you would have those neighborhood garage sales, right? Where everybody would have, and this is when it was cool. Like neighborhoods still do this, but only like 20% of the houses do it. And this is when everyone did it. And, one neighbor would have a snow cone machine. The other one would be making ice cream, and you would ride your bike around, all that stuff. I loved it. And so we have in Indiana, there is a stretch of road. It's like 30 miles long, if not more than that, where it's all garage sales in the May timeframe.
Yeah.
And I haven't done it for a while, and I definitely didn't do it last year, but, I love those things because you never know what you can find. It's kind of a hunt.
If we fast forward beyond childhood and through your teens into your adult life and where you are now, is there a particular piece of marketing that stands out to you as the worst way you have ever been marketed to?
The worst way that I've been marketed to, or that I have marketed? Because there's
the worst way that, okay, let's do that question. So, the worst way that you have marketed, and then I want to know the worst way you've been marketed to.
Well, okay. So I played music in junior high with a friend of mine, and our band was called DJ Ice.
Nice.
And I had like the old Mix Maxer or something that you could buy for PC to mix like tracks, and he played guitar and sang, and it was DJ Ice, music for the working people. We were like in 7th grade, and we made this poster I still have the poster somewhere downstairs, but DJ Ice, music for the working people, had cassette tapes that we had recorded these on using our computers and stuff. I'm pretty sure we just put the mic up to the computer speaker and recorded the song playing, and that was on the tape. And my mom used to make crafts like wooden calendars and pictures and all that, and she would sell them at craft shows. And we went and tried to sell these tapes at a craft show with this poster that said DJ Ice, music for the working class. And it was terrible. Nobody bought it. I think my mom might have given one of her friends money to come buy a tape from us, but it's definitely the worst thing I've ever marketed. 100%.
All right. Now on the flip side, what's the worst thing that's ever been marketed to you, or the worst marketing you've ever received, rather?
I can't, man, that is a great question. I I think it's when I can't think of a particular thing. Actually, the worst way to market to me, and it gets me so upset, is when people make billboards and you can't read the text on the billboard. I hate it. Like it ruins my day. It will ruin my day if I'm driving by a billboard and it's just some person's face and you have no idea what the hell they do because some marketing company just said, "Hey, we'll buy you a billboard." It's not in particular to me, but it happens way too often. And billboards work, people. You just got to actually do them correctly. So that's probably my biggest pet peeve in marketing. And that's why I've never bought something from a billboard that I can't read.
Is it safe to say then that the last year working remotely, your life has been significantly better because you haven't had to drive past as many billboards?
I've been so much happier. Well, we did drive to Florida. That was a little rough. And if you've ever driven down I-65, there is a law firm, Daryl Isaacs, who's the Hammer, and his billboards are awesome. But he pretty much bought out 900 miles of I-65 because that is all that's on there is this Daryl Isaacs guy. And he makes has movie posters and it's like him in a movie, but it's him as an injury attorney. I like those billboards. But
yeah, it's kind of like if you've seen that movie, I Love You, Man, with Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Where Jason Segel ends up like buying out billboards for him as a real estate agent. And it's like James Bond, licensed to sell, all that stuff. You know, NPR actually did a report recently on like billboard law firms and like, why do they buy billboards? Why do they choose their location and how it's actually really successful as a marketing tool?
Oh man, this guy, he is so successful. And what bothers me is why doesn't he just buy the billboard company? You know how much money he's probably spending? Just buy the freaking billboards, right?
Right.
Like you can own a media conglomerate with your trial attorney, whatever you call it.
All right. So from billboards to brand building, can you talk through how you got started at Lessonly? Because at this point, you've been there for about
4 years.
4 years-ish, yeah.
Yep. It's pretty much similar to ExactTarget, Salesforce, OpenView, like my past jobs. It all kind of stems from the CEO of ExactTarget, who's Scott Dorsey, or was the CEO of ExactTarget and co-founder. He pushed me, he encouraged me to go take the OpenView role. OpenView is a venture capital firm in Boston, usually does Series A, Series B checks. Mm-hmm. And spending time at OpenView, I met the guys at Lessonly because Lessonly is a portfolio company of OpenView. Lessonly is also Indianapolis, and Lessonly is also involved with Scott Dorsey. So when we were going to move back from Boston, it just made sense that we would, that they were hiring a VP of marketing. This was my first like real stint on an exec team. And the growth phase was correct. I knew pretty much the entire board. Like it just made sense to me that I would make that move because it's been a very supportive role, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm then curious to know, because you were brought in as the VP of marketing. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, did you have in your mind, well, I'm going to be the CMO of this company?
Yeah, my goal, I've always had a goal to be a CMO before I was 35, and that happened on my 35th birthday. So
congrats.
not exactly on my 35th year. It wasn't like May 24th. Congratulations, you're now a CMO. So that was a goal, and it just so happened that, you know, we were just growing, and it was, you know, it's still fun. We're still growing, and, you know, it made sense that I would continue to build out the team because my main thing is just more challenges. And as long as there's more challenges coming our way as a team, then I am fully engaged.
You mentioned the goal of being a CMO by 35. I just have to share a quick anecdote here. When I created a Twitter account back in 2010, I believe it was, my original idea for my Twitter handle, I didn't do it, but it was going to be at CMO by 30. And then I was like, well, that's a little conceited. And then I went with Raj Nation, and the name stuck from there. So
yeah,
I
well,
guess
that was a better move. That was a better move.
Yeah,
I like that.
But no, I definitely had a similar goal. Our paths kind of ultimately ended up being different, you and I, but
Sure.
very much that same kind of thought process of like leading initiatives and everything.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. I went into OpenView. Like I've started an agency, a couple years after college. So I was thinking, do I want to do the CEO thing again? Do I want to start something again? Do I want to become an operator again? Because venture capital was really interesting and that type of stuff. But ultimately it made sense that I would continue down that operator route.
See, what I found was, so when I was in college, my thought was like, oh, I definitely want to work at like an ad agency. And I had literally been like following a specific agency like
Yeah,
my
me too.
entire
Me
4 years. And I had like
Me
shadowed
too.
a couple people there along the way. And I interviewed with them. I even got the job, but I saw in the interview process, I was like, because the whole like hire based on like accounts that you have. I was like, okay, so there's zero stability because you just get fired if they lose the account.
Yeah.
And also the reality of this job is you just sit in an Excel spreadsheet and do media buys all day. And that sounds awful.
Yeah. Yeah. I same path, man. I like one of my favorite books is Emotional Branding by, I'm going to butcher his name, but I think it's Mark Gobay. I've never actually seen him or heard him interviewed, but it was all about like the product design and the advertising campaigns. And this was written in the 90s. And I thought that I wanted to go work in advertising as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I stemmed more towards music business, but wanted to work in an agency that supported record labels. And then that was 2008, 2007, 2008. I graduated in 2006. And that was when like MySpace music was just destroying everyone.
Right.
Like it was just, record labels had no idea what to do. And I was like, maybe I should go do something else. Maybe I should do more of a brand route.
It's kind of funny to see I always look at like how different technologies of the time even like impact pop culture. And if you remember,
oh, sure.
I believe it was the winter of 2007, early 2008, when Lupe Fiasco's The Cool album came out. And in one of the songs, Hip Hop Saved My Life, he's telling the story of like a Houston rapper that he's made up, but he says 1,100 fans on his MySpace page, which like today, that line has no relevance, but at the time it meant so much.
Yeah. But I mean, can you like and now it's all Spotify and streaming and you have independent artists that are making huge names for themselves via TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's the direction it should have went to begin with.
At a deeper level, is kind of a tangent here. This is actually why I think shows like Seinfeld and Friends have had such staying power, because they never really relied on the technology of the time to make their plot.
Yep.
Right. Like there were episodes where Jerry had a computer in the back corner versus just like an open
I don't think
desk.
he ever used it. Did he ever?
But it was never a part of the episode.
Do like maybe to buy an airplane ticket. Maybe I think
right.
One. That was it. It was never used. There was some phone stuff, but
it was all like that's how you be timeless. You don't rely on the tech 100%. Of the day or the hot flavor of the day. So maybe that's a good conversation around brand then, and technology as well. So what you notice as companies are growing is they are so deeply focused on product, and it's all about product development, product life cycle. Let's hire a product marketer, which is often one of the first marketing hires, if not the first. At what point should a company be focusing on brand or start focusing on brand?
I mean, it's day one. It's day one. You have to, the founders, the original people, have to believe in the foundation of the company, right? And Leslie's a good example of that. Our values are timeless. They will not be redone. They're not like drive excitement and blah, 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 right? They were built from the core of our CEO. He lives and breathes all of it. And the mission statement is we help people do better work so they can live better lives. It doesn't matter what you build. It all applies, right? So I think it's foundational because a brand starts inward, and it will always be internal first. And if you can't scale a community of people that believe in what you do and the brand, which is the brand, and they are not the voice of the brand, it does not matter what you try to do externally. It will never work. It will break. There's gotta be believers. And you've got to have a way to scale it. A lot of times those first 16 people, 15 people, like it doesn't scale very well. And I've been very lucky to have worked at 3 companies now that figured that out. ExactTarget had figured that out. Salesforce, you damn sure they figured it out very early on, right? And they still do. And Lessonly has. And it's interesting to just watch a company change, but still maintain the foundational purpose of who they are, whether it's 200 employees, 2,000 employees, or 20,000 employees. And so it's got to start. You've got to build the community internally before customers. And then the next step is customers. Customers have to believe in the brand, have to believe in the community, have to believe in what you're doing. And then the market will collapse, in my opinion. That's why I have a problem with people that are like still trying to find product market fit, talking about category creation. It's like, why in the hell do you have no idea what you're even selling? You're 2 years into a product. Like, get the customers. They're going to love it. They're going to tell you what it is. Lessonly's 8 years in, and we are finally hitting the ground in a category type model.
Interesting. So you think that at the product market fit stage, it's too early to be talking about category design?
Yes. Unless it's, I mean, look, I'm sure you're going to have listeners going to be like, hey, what about Datadog or whoever? Like, there are outliers that will figure that out early on, and they're going to be a rocket ship, right? But for the majority of us, you should not be thinking about category creation until you get a subset of customers that love what you do and believe in what you do. I think Gainsight did that very well. Anthony at Gainsight, I think he figured that out early on. And the product will change as you build it out. And I think that's important to note as well. And I think a lot of times companies spend too much time and energy on analysts early on when they should be saving that for something else, and then hit the analyst route when they have the customer base to validate it. Sorry, that was a really long answer. Kind of got
it's a helpful answer, but it actually opens up a healthy part of this conversation, which is you talked about community, like you used the word community 6 or 7 times. And I think oftentimes we think about getting customers, not necessarily building community. So how do you view the relationship between customer base and community base? And is it easier for some markets versus others?
So the end of that question is definitely, it definitely makes more sense in some industries other than others. I'd say like the developer world, like engineers, like you're selling to DevOps or whatever. I think that plays the community element a little bit easier. Now, I've never done it, so this is me speaking out of turn, is at least what I've seen in the market, because that's how they buy, right? They buy from their peers. If their peers using Datadog, the other person's going to use Datadog, right?
And I think that's an industry as well, or it's an audience that likes to share knowledge with one another.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. There's no real like competition between the other.
Absolutely. Person. For other industries or other just use cases, I think it's just dependent on, what the community is, right? Like you can have a outreach buying sales hacker, right? And that's a sales community that was already built. For ExactTarget, it was around the brand. It was Orange Nation. Like it was around Orange as the ExactTarget brand. You went through your Orange onboarding. Customers had Orange stuff. Our entire conference was Orange. Lessonly's kind of doing the yellow thing in that route. And then you just have it over the community of people that are already customers. And it's really, really hard to do if you don't have a subset of customers that love you. And that's also a reason why it's really hard to build a community early on. I think talking about category creation and community development happens after you've figured out product market fit, and you've figured out scale, and you've figured out your internal community first.
So it's almost like you need both the tangible and the intangible infrastructure, if you will, to be able to support community and support a category.
Well, you need the people. Like people need to believe in what you're selling, right? And then your people will help you build a community, right? It's just really hard to be a newer piece of software or a newer company in general. I don't care what you sell, honestly, to create a community unless you also have had that community in the past. Like if the CEO of Twilio, what's his name, Jeff, if he were to go start another company, he's got to like that is a given community that's moving with him, right?
Sure.
But for people that like new entrepreneurs or where you're just trying to start something, it's going to take a lot of time and energy to do that, but you need a foundation. Most people just jump right into got to create community, got to create community, got to create community. And you've got to create the foundation or the company won't scale. If you want to scale something, if you want to build a lifestyle business, that's a completely different conversation.
Even then, though, there's an argument that could be made that community would still benefit even your lifestyle business.
Yeah, and it will grow, but at a different speed, right?
Right, of course. So let's look at like Lessonly's strategy amidst all this. Can you talk us through? So actually, let me ask it this way. Oftentimes, as companies grow, yes, there's a marketing department, but marketing is kind of like an order fulfillment department where it's like different people in the company are like, oh, I need this marketing. Can you make it? And it's kind of just like it's kind of like a glorified like graphic design team and like collateral development team. So that's not the case. Or that's not the perception I have of Lessonly anyway. And at least from what I've known of you over the last several months, like I don't think you would tolerate that, and you probably would have quit if that were the case. So can you talk us through like how does Lessonly's marketing team have a real seat at the table here regarding decision making and strategy?
We produce revenue. I'm revenue before brand. I love brand, but in order for us to do things like our customer community, our board game, our Golden Llama, direct mail, virtual events, we had to prove that we could generate revenue for the sales team. And when I say generate, meaning sourcing deals that close, right? And so the problem with a lot of marketers is that it's very communications based. It's like we have designers, brand, PR, comms, basically kind of corporate marketing, right? If you're thinking about that structure, and you don't get a lot of say when you're not producing ARR, like especially for a scale up, right? So that was my first task, was just to make sure that we were constantly sourcing revenue and sourcing more revenue and hitting revenue goals. My teams are comped on their variables based off of revenue. But we also have the brand team that's design and web dev, and they are, we have an internal agency basically that helps support all of our business units, because I also don't want to give control of the brand over to an agency or over to a separate team because of the time and energy that my team has spent building this thing out over the past 4 years.
So I want to highlight something that you said there, which is, the topic today is making your brand your competitive advantage, and and that's the topic. But what's important to note here is you said, well, we are responsible for revenue, and I prioritize revenue over brand. So can you just unpack that a little bit more? Because I want to make sure everyone listening really understands what you mean by this and how brand ties into revenue. Yeah.
And brand, it's just really hard to talk about brand because it's all encompassing. Like the application that prospects job candidates are filling out, that's part of the brand. How you're interacting with somebody on an interview is part of the brand. The call that your account manager had with one of your biggest customers, that is part of the brand, right? The way that our CEO goes and talks about nonviolent communication and more of the soft skills of leadership, that's part of the brand. Me on this podcast, it's part of the Lessonly brand, right? We are all part of it. It's a living, breathing organism. So when I say brand, it is, how do we set up ourselves apart and deliver things that surprise and delight from a creative standpoint? So for me, it's Llama Nation, which is our mobile community. It's our customer community. We launched an e-commerce brand called Ollie Llama and Co. Like we have a board game that we send out.
And just to clarify here, he's saying llama because that's Lesson Lee's mascot.
Yeah. Ollie Llama's our mascot. You join the Llama Pack if you join Lesson Lee. Llama Nation is our customer base, that type of stuff. And all that's part of the brand, right? But I will forever believe that you have to give designers and creatives the ability to be irrational in order to come up with cool ideas that set you apart from the pack, right? And people that are held to a revenue number, I'm going to get to the initial question. People that are held to a revenue number on like, we're going to have a retro about this 3 weeks from now to make sure that we got ROI on that board game that you made. They're not like, they can't be as creative because they're going to be worried about the cost. They're going to be all this stuff. So for me, it is 75% of our budget, headcount, program spend goes towards generating revenue. We hit our goals. We grow revenue quarter over quarter. That allows us to say 25% of headcount and program spend goes to brand, and we do not measure it. Other than direct traffic went up, great. Like I just don't want to measure brand. I want it to surprise. I want people to be delighted by it. I don't need somebody questioning me whether our Ollie Llama and Co e-commerce brand actually did anything to drive revenue. Like that's not the point, right? So for me, but in order for me to have done that 25% of budget, I had to produce the revenue first. Like you can't go into a marketing leadership role and be like, we're going to launch an e-commerce brand and it's going to be an awesome brand play. And you're still trying to figure out revenue growth. Like you can't do that because you are going to be one of the unfortunate stats that are happening right now in scale up venture-backed software that you're going to be removed in like 16 months. And that's the average right now for marketing and sales leaders. That's about 16 months tenure. For me, you prove the fact that you can generate revenue so that everybody else is like, hell yeah, let's do that crazy idea because we're hitting our revenue goals. We are a company. Like we have investors, right? We can't just go do a bunch of brand stuff all the time. So that's why we kind of separate the two in order to surprise and delight prospects and customers, because ultimately the only thing that makes any of us relevant is the experience that they're having. And that's it.
So it's 75% revenue generating activities, which unlocks the ability to do 25% of non-revenue generating brand building activities.
Yeah. And you can do like, I'm sure somebody's going to ask why 25%.
Sure.
I don't know.
But essentially have enough focus on revenue. So that way you can have enough focus on brand.
Yeah. And just stop trying to measure it all the time. Like I get that you need like social measurement and all that. And it's just not something we focus on at Lesson Lee. It is delight our customers, delight our prospects. The brand will build with it.
Right. So the lesson here from Lesson Lee, ironic, is is in order to be able to do things that you don't measure, you have to do enough things well that you do measure.
Well, if you're going to win a market, you can't be in a feature war all day long. So you got to do cool stuff, and you can't do cool stuff if you're not generating revenue.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Now, I want to unpack more of the revenue generating activities. Before I get into that, let me just take a step back for a moment. All this season, we are featuring different companies in the Startup Hype Man client portfolio and sharing their pitches with you that we have developed. Today, we're featuring Engagedly, an HR tech company, and we're featuring their pitch using the Startup Hype Man KPASA pitch formula. So if you are in HR and you're an HR leader, perhaps you have felt like you've just been buried in spreadsheets and paper documents, tracking your team's goals, their OKRs, and their overall engagement with the company. And that's probably creating a trickle-down effect of missteps in the process, having to chase down managers for approval, and reviews being subjective. Now, in a pre-COVID world, it was partially tolerable because everyone was at least roughly in the same office. In a remote work environment, it's kind of impossible. And as things potentially go back to a hybrid workforce, it's probably not going to get any easier. So where Engagedly steps in is in helping leaders like you streamline and control your processes regardless of the physical environment. Organizations are using Engagedly for company-wide people enablement. All of performance management lives on one platform in one place, so there's no missteps, no hunting down managers, and no having to wonder where something is in the process. HR leaders love it because they're not buried anymore. More importantly, though, at an organizational level, performance turns into something that happens for employees and team members instead of happening to them. You can learn more and get a demo at engagedly.com. Again, that's engagedly.com to give your team people enablement. Today, we are talking with the Lessonly CMO, Kyle Lacy, specifically about making your brand your competitive advantage. Before the break, Kyle, we talked about that 75-25 split. 75% of Lessonly's marketing is revenue-generating activity. Now, one thing I know from having spoken to you a few times before is that you have SDRs aligned under marketing. Like SDRs are your team. Not every company does that, though. Many companies have SDRs allocated towards sales leadership. So I got to imagine that's one way you're generating revenue or tracking revenue generated is through your SDRs. But can you talk through the decision to have them under your team and how that fits into the overall revenue picture out of marketing's wing?
Yeah. Like everything in a company that's growing significantly, you're breaking things constantly. The model that we had in place in 28, like the middle of 2018, wasn't working. So I raised my hand and said, I'd love to take on this challenge.
Can you qualify what you mean when you say it wasn't working?
The channel wasn't working. Demos weren't being booked to the point that they should have been. Like the team they weren't hitting their goals is the best way. So, that's part of it. The other part of it was I believe that if you are producing revenue as a marketer, like direct sourcing revenue and not any of this influence crap, you are forcing alignment between sales and marketing, which is probably outside of product and engineering, one of the most important things that need to be aligned within a scale up. So those were the two reasons. AEs still self-source, but inbound and outbound. So outbound BDRs who are prospecting cold, and then you've got our inbound SDRs that are working deals from the website. Like they contribute a significant amount to an AE's quota, and then the AE self-sources. So it ranges between 50 to 70% of the revenue every quarter, depending on goals and what we're in. Fluctuations in the market and stuff like that.
Aside from the SDRs, I should say, what are the other trackable revenue generating things? Is it you look at your inbound efforts and your demand gen and you say, oh, well, this led to X number of booked meetings. Can you walk us through kind of the playbook there?
Yeah. So and this is, I'm going to preface this by saying that we have two segments. We have our commercial SMB segment and we have an enterprise segment. And the enterprise segment is fairly new to Lessonly. So we are evolving the way we track this stuff. So for the commercial segment, it's pretty much who initially sourced it. Like, did an SDR set the meeting? Did they come through a form? Did they raise their hand to get a demo? Did they come from an event or direct, organic, paid, all those channels? And if they sourced it within 60 days, that's the source that gets credit for the close one deal. If it's after 60 days, then it's whoever touched it first. Like if an AE then sources it or whatever. On the enterprise side, it's a combination of demo and pipeline. And we're starting to move more towards a pipeline generated model over how many meetings did you book, just because of the nature of enterprise. Like it's just, it's 12-month sales cycles. You've got multiple meetings, multiple touches. AEs and SDRs are aligned one-to-one, working together on account planning and all that stuff. So we have definitely been shifting the model over the past 6 months, but it's usually either, did you set a meeting and where did it come from and what type of pipeline did it generate?
Now, on the sales side, are AEs themselves also doing any active outbound prospecting, or is it solely your SDR team?
Yeah, so AEs are responsible for self-sourcing a portion of their quota. Yeah, so they're also prospecting.
Okay, so then I'm curious. Let's say there's a situation where an AE has self-sourced a lead. Now that lead takes the meeting. Well, yeah, sure, the email reached out to them at the right time, but they've also just generally been aware of Lessonly through good marketing over the years. Are you saying, and maybe on the call they say, oh yeah, I heard about you guys, and so I was interested. Now, is that become a marketing revenue generated thing, or is it a sales generated thing?
Sales. And this is why I hate, marketers that use influence as a number would say, well, that means marketing influence 20% of it or whatever. Like, who cares? Marketing should influence 100% of the revenue you're generating, right? That's why I don't measure it. It's like if somebody comes in and they weren't influenced by something, that's impossible. It is impossible, right? They'd have to like pick up the phone and never heard of it. Like, I could talk about the influence metric. I just think it's just a bunch of BS. But it's just it's depending on the service level agreement, the SLA that we set with ops and with sales to say in these timeframes, if the channel is the one that sourced it, it's the one that gets the deal.
What would you say then is, so let's look at like on the things you are responsible for where it's not influence, quote unquote, like let's take a virtual event, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that's obviously like a heavily influencing event, but is it, hey, anyone who registered for this virtual event, within a 60-day window, that falls
if it was marketing. First touch, like if they heard about the event through a LinkedIn ad, came and signed up for the event, and then they went closed one, like if they signed a contract, it would be credited to LinkedIn. And like we have attribution modeling, but we don't, it's mostly just around budgeting.
Do you think then, because the more you're talking about this, do you think it's possible to be able to make brand a competitive advantage if you don't have like kind of a sophisticated tech stack?
Yeah, because I think Lessonly won the first 5 years or 4 years because of brand. And the way that Max built the company early on to be customer first. I mean, one of the values is we put learners first. And people stick around. We have customers that have been with us for 8 years because they're just taken care of. They're treated like a human and not a MRR number every month, right? So I do think that you have advantages, but we don't really use our tech stack for brand advantage, other than like a lot of our tech stack's more around generating revenue.
Yeah, like
I don't have a listening technology or like a Meltwater or whatever. Like it's just it's more of the experiences that I care about, like our events, what happens when you come to the website. Like that's why we look at consumer marketers over other B2B marketers when we're trying to find inspiration. It's like, what would Nike do? What would Warby Parker do? What would Aldo do? And that's how we frame it. And that's how we build our brand and build our identity and build our experiences at Lessonly.
I'm glad you mentioned that last point, because I agree with your thought process there. And one of the trends I've seen over the last, I'd probably call it really 2 years, is this convergence between B2B and B2C marketing, where before it was like, if you're a B2B marketer, it's almost like forbidden to do something the way a B2C company would. And now you're seeing so many more B2B companies like mirroring what B2C does, to the extent that like, one of the things that I've recently done, but I got the idea from Profitwell, was to like look at like hype retail companies and do like drops, right? And give your audience content or give them product through that measure, where it's a drop instead of, the traditional way where it's like, well, let's figure out a HubSpot demand gen strategy for this, and all this stuff. And it's like, hey, some of these people, you might not even get their information, but
Right.
you're going to get your stuff in their hands.
Right. Right. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Wistia, Chris Savage. Like, he talks all the time about how companies should be media companies. And that's that you got to get granular, actually trying to explain what a media company is. But for me, it's just producing things that delight people without saying, hey, you need to drive 30 grand in business from something that costs 10.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, you lose. Now, that doesn't mean you're not fiscally responsible. Everybody listening to this call right now, you still need to be fiscally responsible. That's why we produced revenue first before we decided to do all these crazy things. But you've got to think more like a consumer marketer, because they care, because they live, and in e-commerce marketers even better, because they live and die by the experience.
Mm-hmm.
If your cart breaks and I'm trying to buy something, you really think I'm going to come back? No, I'm going to go to Amazon and probably buy it, because Amazon is ugly as hell, but it's one-click purchasing. There's a reason why they patented it in 97, right? It's just easy. So stuff we keep in mind at Lessonly, but we still have our things to work on. There's still some B2B villains creeping in there at some point.
Well, can you maybe just quickly run through, you mentioned a couple examples earlier on in our conversation, but for those who are not familiar with Lessonly, they probably didn't necessarily know what you were referencing. What are some of the fun brand things you guys have done? You talked about the board game, like the e-com store, but you mentioned those, and if people aren't familiar with Lessonly, they don't necessarily know what you're talking about. So maybe expand on a few of those things. Yeah.
So we are the best one that we've done. Well, there's a few, but we give a golden llama every quarter to an employee. They're the golden llama for that quarter. And we decided that we were going to send a bunch of golden llamas to customers, and there wasn't any context to Lessonly at all. It was like, hey, this is what we do at Lessonly. We think you should give this golden llama to an employee that exhibits your values. And we've sent 5,000 of these things out, and we've had people take pictures with them and share them. And that was a cool idea. And it had nothing about the product, zero things about the product. We wrote a book called Do Better Work. Max, to be clear, our CEO wrote a book called Do Better Work. Zero things about the product. It's all about leadership development and people development and the human element of just living, right? We've spent a ton of time and energy building out dobetterwork.com and all this stuff that has to do with our mission. And then the board game, we have pillars of our product: learn, practice, perform, assess. And so we built out this llama board game that walked through the 6 worlds of Lessonly, and you have game pieces and everything. And that's just fun. It's fun to see companies playing that game, because we spent so much time and energy building something that mattered. And I don't want another water bottle. I don't want another t-shirt. Like everybody's t-shirt's soft now. Thank you, American Apparel. Everybody's t-shirt is soft now. I don't want another t-shirt. I want you to spend some time and energy as marketers trying to think of something that's different, because that's what you should be doing as marketers. Right. And I don't think a lot of marketers give their teams the ability to think outside of the box. And that's the main problem. They buy a vendor and they say, pick from this catalog. You could do a keychain that's a lamp, or whatever the hell you buy now. Like
a keychain that's a lamp.
That was a terrible example. I was thinking of the keychain flashlights, but
yeah.
And it just, I just can't. I cannot. I mean, you asked me the question, and we could do this full circle now. A lot of the swag I get's terrible marketing.
Yeah.
Like I don't,
it's almost to the point
sending me something that I'm going to throw away. You're giving me a task to do, because
and I'm so with you on that, especially with you're right. And at this point, if someone sends a not soft cotton shirt, I'm like, all right, come on. Like, what are you doing? There's no chance I'm wearing this.
I will tell you a quick story. The first t-shirt that I got from Morning Brew, this was like years ago, before they, now they're social media celebrities, but they sent me the most uncomfortable shirt I have ever received from a brand. And I sent an email to them. I was like, guys, we got to work on the shirt game here, because it feels like something my dad wore to a softball tournament. Like it was just stiff. and large. I will say Morning Brew has upped their game significantly, and the swag I get is amazing from them. But that was I just can't. It's a pet peeve of mine, like the billboards. It's like,
well,
you can do better.
I'm at the point where if someone is like, hey, we want to send you a shirt, even if it's like, hey, it's like a thank you for doing something, I'll reply and I'll be like, hey, I love the gesture. To be honest, like I'm like, my wardrobe is maxed out, not just with my own clothes, but with like branded apparel. Like, please take mine and just like donate it to, like a shelter, or donate it to charity or something, or Goodwill. And I'll tell you, whenever I, at some point this year, I'm probably going to do some startup hype man swag, and it'll be some form of apparel. But my whole thing with, like, if you're going to do branded merch, it has to be something that someone would wear regularly. Right? It can't be like your company name like slapped across the thing and it like looks bad. Like, it's got to be something that like they might find on the shelf at Macy's or Nordstrom and they're like, oh, this is an interesting shirt. I should wear this.
Yeah. And we, that's why we launched. We figured out that our customers want our swag, our employees want our swag. So we launched Ollie Llama & Co. It has nothing to do with Lessonly. It's its own brand. And we sent for every holiday, we're sending it out to our customers, and they have the choice. They can either buy something or they can donate their gift card to Donors Shoes. And that's, or to our, I donate to Donors Shoes. They can do it to our Brighter Indy Foundation, which gives money to organizations in Indianapolis for underserved kids. And that's awesome. And it's its own brand. It's not the Lessonly logo on the front. It's just a little llama that looks like a Brooks Brothers logo, or Cotopaxi, which I'm a huge fan of Cotopaxi, but you got to be more creative. You have to be in order to win. And I think that's the whole concept of this, that's the underlying theme of this conversation.
You've got to be creative to win. Now, I have one more question here before we hit our wrap up. And that is, if you were to fast forward so let me use an analogy here. In sports, a manager, wins the World Series, wins a championship. In Chicago, it happened, right? Joe Madden won a World Series for the Cubs. And then, 4 years later, his time was up and, he wasn't fired, but his contract was not renewed. And in other cases, the coach or the manager is fired because they're not there anymore. So if you fast forward, whether it's Lessonly or a future company, what's the George Costanza thing you do that they're like, all right, we have to fire this guy now? Like, what's like I streaked across the field during a Yankees game, or I dragged the World Series trophy through the parking lot thing that gets Kyle Lacy fired in his future life?
Oh, man. Probably making a huge monetary bet on a crazy idea. I think that's probably what's going to do it. It's going to be like, we should buy a Lamborghini and put Ollie Llama on the side of it and give it away, and it just fails.
Lamborghini.
I don't know. A Lamborghini. Oh my God. We're going to listen to this 4 years later after I get fired for buying a Lamborghini. I'm going to be like, it happened. That happened there. The idea came from there.
And then this will be Startup Hype Man, the podcast, the show that ultimately gets you fired.
And then you're going to have to hire me. Sorry.
Exactly. All right. So to wrap up then, Kyle, where can our listeners find you and learn more?
You can go, for Lessonly.com. You can go to, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and Kyle P. Lacy on Twitter.
Awesome. Kyle, who's one person who you want to shout out? Could be a coworker, a mentor, an advisor, a team member.
I mean, I'm going to shout out the entire marketing team that I serve. I'm very lucky to serve at Lessonly. They are some of the best people I've ever worked with. So I'm going to shout out all of them, because it's a great team.
We got to be able to tag one person though when we post this.
Helen Gardner is our brand. She leads our brand team. Recently promoted to run the brand team, and she has been integral from the very beginning since I've been there in the build out of the experience and the identity of Lessonly. So the brand. Helen
Gardner getting the shout out in addition to the entire marketing team.
Yeah. You can put all 45 names.
Yeah. I'll just, it'll be a crazy. LinkedIn will cap the amount of tags you can do on that. Let's now do top lessons or takeaways for the listeners based on our discussion today. I'll go first, then I'll toss it to you. The topic today was making your brand your competitive advantage. We talked about a lot of really good stuff. To me, the one thing that I want listeners to really keep in mind and keep close to heart is when it comes to brand building activities, this is probably the hardest thing to do, but it doesn't sound that hard. As you mentioned, resist the urge to pitch your product. Resist the urge to mention your product. So many good pieces of content or good things that are put out get ruined because the company tries to then insert their product at the end of it. And you will destroy any goodwill you've created up to that point because people will feel like, oh my God, this was just a clever pitch that was disguised as something else. Kyle, top lessons or takeaways?
Top takeaway would be if you think a campaign is creative, go sleep on it and then come back and look at it again because you probably could take it one step further.
Ooh,
because creativity wins. Creativity wins markets, in my opinion.
My final question, which is how we end every episode on this show. Fill in the blank, Kyle. Entrepreneurship is blank.
Oh, crazy. Crazy. That's it.
Say more on that. Why crazy?
You have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. Like I lost years off the end of my life when I was a CEO of a company, or at least just the guy who founded an agency of 10 people. You've got to have, and I mean this in all sincerity and honesty and love for entrepreneurs. You've got to have a screw loose somewhere, and not to say they're crazy, but you have to take it one step farther than most normal human beings go. Whether it's risk tolerance or whatever, optimism, you got to have, like, it's a special type of person that can build a company and scale it. And I've seen that with Max. Mark Benioff's a great example. Scott Dorsey, great example. I would never, to be clear, I would never go to Scott Dorsey and say, I think you have a screw loose, Scott. But it's like, you got to be a little crazy in order to win. And I give huge respects for people that can do that. Huge respect.
I will definitely say I have a couple screws loose myself, and maybe a couple of them need tightening.
Me too. I just don't want to tighten them. So.
He is Kyle Lacy, the Lessonly CMO. Kyle, thank you so much for joining today on Startup Hype Man, the podcast.
Thank you.
That wraps up today's conversation. Did you like what you heard? Startup Hype Man, the podcast, is available on every major platform, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and more. So be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and leave a rating and review. Do you want to be an upcoming guest on the show? Email media@startuphypeman.com with your idea, and my team will review. Our theme song is Change the Game by Jay-Z, all rights owned by Rockefeller and Def Jam Records. And hey, if you want to work together on making your startup story the only one that matters, email me at rajiv@startuphypeman.com. That's RAJIV@startuphypeman.com. Well, that'll do it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you to today's guests for joining. You have been checking out Startup Hype Man, the podcast. I'll catch you next week. But in the meantime, word up, raise up.